Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Transfer Show with breaking news to bring you tonight. Tanguy Ndombele and Darmesh will bring us updates on Erling Harland, Vlahović and Mohamed Salah. Also, Philippe Coutinho arrives in Birmingham to finalise his loan move to Aston Villa. But first, and good evening to Tanguy and Darmesh, that breaking news from Newcastle. It looks like their search for a striker is pretty much over, Tanguy.
Yes, Chris Wood, the Burnley forward, is travelling to the northeast tonight to have a medical with Newcastle. We were telling you yesterday about the fact that Newcastle wanted to sign him, but crucially Burnley did not want to sell Chris Wood because they did not want to sell one of their forwards to a relegation rival. It's the last thing they wanted to do. And we mentioned the fact that one way the deal could happen is if there was a release clause in the contract. And this evening what we're hearing is that Newcastle have met his release clause, and that is thought to be in the region of about £20 million. So doesn't make sense for Burnley to be selling Chris Wood to Newcastle, but I think at the end of the day there's nothing they could do about it because there was this release clause in Chris Wood's contract. And the reason, of course, Newcastle are so desperate to sign a striker is because Callum Wilson is out injured, Dwight Gale is sidelined as well, and they've got this crucial game against Watford at the weekend, so they really wanted to bring a forward in before that game, and it looks like they're about to sign Chris Wood.
And you've got, as we said last night, men like Alain Saint-Maximin and now Kieran Trippier to deliver fantastic crosses, and up to now they've had no one to stick him away.
I mean, they've had Callum Wilson, but obviously they're not going to have him.
Yeah.
They're not going to have him at the moment because of his injury problems. But you would think that this is quite a sensible signing by Newcastle in the sense that this is a player who's got a vast amount of experience playing in the Premier League, so he knows what it's all about. It's not going to take him time to acclimatise to playing in the Premier League. And I think it would have been more of a risk if they'd signed a player who didn't have that Premier League experience. But I think from what Darmesh is reporting, they are looking abroad for other strikers as well.
I'll come to that in a second. Just on Chris Wood, you've both done this a long time. He's 33 Premier League goals this season, but the need is urgent. Does 20 million, if that is the release clause, does that feel about right in terms of the value, either of you?
Well, I mean, I think Burnley, if he'd gone to any other club and gone for £20 million, I think they would have been thinking this is great business for a 30-year-old who scored 3 goals. But it's not any club. And they simply would not have wanted to sell to Newcastle United. But that release clause, it's kind of hamstrung them a bit because once someone meets that release clause, he's free to talk to that club.
I'll come back to where that leaves Burnley in a second, but Cave flagged it. Might not be the end of Newcastle's striker acquisitions.
No, remember we said yesterday that we think they're after 2 strikers, one experienced one and one up-and-coming one, is what we've been led to believe. The experienced one will come in the form of Chris Wood, and they wanted a striker in by the Watford game. Looks like it is going to be Chris Wood before the Watford game. But the one for the future is the Reims striker, Hugo Ekitike. Now, talks are continuing with this deal, but there still remains a gap in the valuation between what Newcastle want to spend and what Reims value Ekitike at. And we think they would want in the region of £30 million for the France under-20 striker. It's not out of the question that this deal can still happen. It's just that gap in valuation does still exist. And with that in mind, Newcastle United are looking at other strikers as well. I mean, they've been linked with so many players, in particular strikers. One that has been quite common throughout this transfer window is Bayer Leverkusen's Patrick Schick. Did so well for the Czech Republic during the European Championships. Sky Germany, I've spoken to them today. Good links, of course, with Bayer Leverkusen. Will they sell Patrick Schick in this transfer window? Their opinion is no way. And for them to even consider, to even contemplate any talks with a potential buying club, I think the bid would have to be in the region of around 50 to 60 million pounds. You've got to remember, Bayer Leverkusen are going for Champions League football. They're in 5th place in the Bundesliga, 2 points off the top 3. So the last thing they'd want would be to see their prized asset in Patrick Schick leave the club in a January transfer.
Whose goals per touch record is absolutely phenomenal. I was hearing that at the weekend. I want to ask you about a defender in a second, but Calvé is itching to get in.
Just one point I would make about Chris Wood at Burnley is that, in a way, at least Burnley have got some time and some money to sign a replacement. They wouldn't want this to have happened on the last day of the window if Newcastle had triggered a release clause, and they wouldn't have had time to sign a replacement. But at least now they've got, something like about 20 days left and £20 million or there.
Which everybody knows they've got.
Which everyone knows they've got, but they've got time to go and sign a striker.
How do you think Sean Dyche will react to losing his prized striking asset?
Well, in private or in public, I think in private he'll be annoyed, but he knows how the football business works. He knows how the transfer windows works, and I think the crucial thing for him will be if he will be given this money to reinvest in a new forward, because we were talking about Newcastle needing to win games as well, and Newcastle having big games coming up. Burnley have got 3 big games coming up in the next 10 days. They're playing Leicester, and then they're playing Watford, and then they're playing Arsenal as well. So they need to sign somebody as well. But I think if you look at the Premier League table, Burnley and Newcastle are both on 11 points. But crucially, Burnley have played 2 fewer games. So it's not all doom and gloom as far as Burnley are concerned. If they were to win those 2 games they have in hand, they would be 6 points above Newcastle.
Yeah, and the pack haven't pulled away, at least not yet.
I just wonder whether Sean Dyche and Burnley had legislated for Chris Wood leaving. He plays for them all the time. He's a regular, and he is the focal point of their attack. Admittedly, you mentioned he's only scored 3 goals in the Premier League, but he is the man that they look to hold the ball up, to bring others into play. And I just wonder, yes, they do have time to replace Chris Wood and maybe the money that Newcastle United will pay them, but have they got a player that can come in and adapt immediately to the style that Chris Wood has got and adapt to the Burnley style?
It's a particular kind of striker who they're not that common anymore. You wanted to mention a Newcastle defender acquisition, possibly.
Yeah, look, we know they're in the market for a central defender. The latest name, they remain interested in the Monaco defender. His name is Benoit Badiashile. Now, he's one of a number of defenders that they have been looking at after we think that they've fully failed now to get Lille's Sven Botman. Lille simply not willing to sell during this transfer window. What do we know about Badiashile? He's 20 years old. He's a France under-21 international. He's contracted to Monaco until 2024. So I think Monaco not under too much pressure to do a deal, and maybe with 2.5 years left on his contract and who they're dealing with in Newcastle United, they may just dig their heels in to think, hold on, we're going to try and charge as much as we can because we know that you have got money. One issue is that Badiashile picked up an injury at Nantes on Sunday. Now, the early signs are that he'll be out for 2 to 3 weeks, which shouldn't impact a January transfer because he'll be fit to play again in February. If it's any longer than that, because initial signs were it was looking to 6 to 8 weeks, it hasn't been confirmed which one is the length of time that's out, then that could impact whether Newcastle United will go for him or not.
OK, let's talk about a couple of strikers that you may well have heard of. Mohamed Salah in a second, but first some news of a meeting at Dortmund relevant to Erling Harland.
Yes, I mean, look, Erling Harland, we're going to be talking a lot about him, I think, in the summer. Because he's got this release clause in his contract, which is about £64 million. He's the most sought-after young striker in the world at the moment. All the biggest clubs in Europe want to sign him. And interestingly, Borussia Dortmund, their director, Sebastian Kehl, has been speaking about Erling Harland. And he said that in the next few days, or maybe next week, I think it is, Borussia Dortmund are planning on sitting down with the player and his representatives and talking about his future, because obviously they want him to stay. They don't want him to leave in the summer. And Sebastian Kehl, his words are, we're trying to achieve clarity. We're trying to persuade Erling to stay at Dortmund. I don't think our chances are too bad. Now, most people in football would say their chances aren't that great, because we know clubs like Real Madrid, Manchester City, Manchester United, PSG, Bayern Munich are all jockeying for position and trying to make sure that they are the team that Erling Harland chooses to go to in the summer. But according to Borussia Dortmund, they haven't given up on him staying at Dortmund, and it sounds like they're a bit hopeful that maybe he will actually stay for at least one more season.
I'm going to be very interested to see where Erling Haaland moves to next, because if you look at the situation now financially in the big leagues in Europe, the Premier League is by far and away the league that could afford everything that's associated with the funds that will be required to buy Erling Haaland. But you can't discount clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona. I just wonder what's going through the mind of his agent, Mino Raiola. Is he thinking, let's get him to a European club outside the Premier League first, and then make the move to the Premier League later, simply because we can then get two sets of fees for Erling Haaland? Because if he was to go to a Premier League club now, would that be the last big move that he could possibly do? Unless he wants to bring in a release clause. Now, if you go to a Spanish club or a German club and they agree to a release clause, they could go as high as, say, 90, 100, 120 million pounds on a release clause, for argument's sake. And you know that when the release clause is that high, the one country and a few clubs that could afford him would be ones in the Premier League. Whereas if he was to go to the Premier League now, what kind of release clause would he have to put in, and would a Premier League club accept the likes of City or Manchester United? So, for example, if they bought him for that release clause of close to £70 million, and then Mino Raiola said, right, you can have him, they can do all of this, this is the agent's fee, this is the wages, but after 3 years his release clause is £85 million, which would be maybe affordable to a Spanish club if he wants to make a move again. How many of those English clubs would be accepting of a release clause like that? I just think that for it to work, for Haaland to realistically get two big moves in his career from now, maybe he needs to go outside the Premier League first and then to the Premier League after.
I think if you're talking about English options for Erling Haaland, at the moment you would have to say that Manchester City are probably his most likely destination. Chelsea, well, they signed Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah.
They've signed Timo Werner and they've signed Kai Havertz. They've spent quite a lot of money on forward players. I wouldn't rule Chelsea out, but I think Manchester City are the club who are perhaps in pole position at the moment. We know they want to sign a striker. They've done very well without an out-and-out recognised striker, but the need is there, and we know they're interested in Erling Haaland, and I think Manchester City would tick a lot of boxes for him as well. But I think Darmish has made the point, is this the right time for Erling Haaland to be moving to the Premier League?
It's all about agent strategies. And talking of strategies, what is Mohamed Salah's strategy? He's been making some interesting comments today.
Yes, he's given an interview to GQ magazine, and I suppose the top line in it is that he wants to stay at Liverpool, and he also says that he is not asking for crazy stuff when it comes to a new contract. Of course, his representatives have been in talks with Liverpool for quite a long time about signing a new contract. He's out of contract in about 18 months' time, and he's almost 30. Of course, since he's moved to Liverpool, Liverpool have won the Champions League, they've won the Premier League title as well. And the exact quotes in the interview are, I want to stay, but it's not in my hands. It's in their hands. I'm not asking for crazy stuff. And I think by crazy stuff, he means he's not asking for £400,000 a week, £500,000 a week. He's set to earn about £200,000 a week at Liverpool, and judging by the impact that he's had at Anfield and the amount of goals that he scored and the fact that he's now arguably the best or one of the best players in the world. I think he came 7th in the Ballon d'Or. Perhaps he should have been a bit higher up than that. I think he's got
and he's in the top 3 for the FIFA best.
Exactly. I think he's got a very good case for saying to Liverpool, look, I need to be the highest paid player at Liverpool if you want me to sign a new contract. But I think Liverpool are pretty relaxed about the situation. If I was a Liverpool supporter reading this interview, I would still be pretty confident that Mohamed Salah is going to stay and sign a new deal.
You say relaxed, that's one way of looking at it, but Liverpool have got plenty to ponder because Mohamed Salah, his contract is up in 2023. He's 30 in June. Sadio Mane, his contract up in 2023. He's 30 in April. Roberto Firmino, guess when his contract's up? 2023 as well, and he's already turned 30. We know that talks are ongoing with Salah, and while we're not publicly privy to talks with Sadio Mane's and Roberto Firmino's representatives, Liverpool aren't stupid. They're aware of this contract situation of their front three, and I'm sure that they will be in dialogue with representatives of all of their key players. But you could argue that the transition had started from that front three because they can't go on forever, and as much as Liverpool fans will want them to. It happened in September 2020 when they went to Wolves and put down 40-50 million pounds and got Diogo Jota, and look how well he's turned out. He was supposed to be the backup to the front three, and now you could argue he's forced his way as a first choice into that front.
He's in the Premier League's top 3 scorers this season, isn't he? So,
exactly.
OK, we've got more big strikers to talk about a little bit later on, but coming up next, the latest from all 20 Premier League clubs, including an update on Jesse Lingard's future. Stay with us.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
We're all in to kick it out.
Partnering to end racism in sport.
Time now to go around the club.
Terrific news, yeah. Arsenal striker Folarin Balogun having a medical with Middlesbrough ahead of joining them on a straight loan deal.
Philippe Coutinho has flown into Birmingham Airport. He's due to train with his new Aston Villa teammates for the first time tomorrow.
Brentford are open to loaning out 4 players, including striker Marcus Forss.
Brighton in talks about a deal to sign Julio Enciso from Paraguayan club Libertad. Meanwhile, Brighton have not received any bids or approaches for Yves Bissouma.
Burnley are on the verge of losing Chris Wood to Newcastle United.
Chelsea can't recall left-back Ian Maatson from his loan spell at Coventry City. They are still in talks about getting Emerson Palmieri back from Lyon.
Crystal Palace remain interested in Arsenal striker Eddie Nketiah. His contract is up in the summer.
Everton want to keep Mason Holgate. Clubs in France and England interested in taking him on loan.
Leeds United defender Cody Drammer to have a medical at Cardiff ahead of a loan move.
Leicester City still looking for loan signings. Top priority is a centre-back.
Mohamed Salah says he's not asking for crazy stuff in contract talks, as he reiterated it is up to Liverpool to decide his future.
Manchester City defender Taylor Harwood-Bellis has joined Stoke City on loan for the rest of the season.
Looking increasingly likely Jesse Lingard will see out his Manchester United contract. Tottenham have expressed an interest in signing him in the summer.
Newcastle close to signing Burnley forward Chris Wood after meeting his release clause this afternoon. That clause is thought to be in the region of £20 million.
Dean Smith says he doesn't expect Norwich City to do major business and expects Max Aarons to stay at the club.
Southampton, one of 3 clubs who've been linked with a move for Lewis FC winger Ollie Tanner.
Antonio Conte says Steven Bergwijn remains an important player for Tottenham. Ajax made an offer of around £15 million, which was rejected.
Now, Watford have been linked with a move for Bordeaux winger Samuel Kalou, but they're focusing on defensive targets at the moment.
David Moyes wants cover in the forward and centre-back positions. The board have told him he does have money to spend.
Wolves in the market for a centre-back, and Marseille's Duja Kaleta-Kar is one of their options.
There is a Premier League game that we're looking forward to this evening. There should have been 2. One was postponed. Southampton Brentford goes ahead. Just a quick word on the team news for you. Lianco, Ibrahim Diallo back into the Southampton team. Mohamed Salah is back in after suspension, and Che Adams is on the bench. He's recovered from COVID. 4 changes for Brentford, including the return to the starting 11 of Brian Mbumo after his hat-trick in the Cup at the weekend. And if you want to see highlights of the game, that is where you go. It's available on the Sky Sports app just after the full-time whistle. And watching that game for us, the former Leeds striker Jermaine Beckford, who's going to give us his expert views on transfers in the meantime. Jermaine, you're very welcome. Good evening to you. The big transfer story this hour, Chris Wood. We think he's on his way for a medical at Newcastle. £20 million, we believe, is the release clause. How good is that for Newcastle? How bad is that for Burnley?
For Newcastle, I think it's a great acquisition. Let me get my words out. Acquisition, if the deal can go through, because Chris Wood, as we know, is a very physical, very clever player. But he's a player that's been in the kind of situation that Newcastle find themselves in at the moment, the bottom half of the Premier League, fighting against the relegation. So he knows what it takes to get out of those tricky situations. And, you know, Newcastle is a fantastic football club with an amazing support and a fan base. On the other side of it, you have to look from Burnley's perspective. They're 2 points from safety. They're in the relegation zone. Chris Wood has been playing pretty much every single game for the last couple of years now for them. So to see that they've been willing to let him go to Newcastle it's catastrophic. Honestly, it's such a bizarre move for Burnley. Definitely is.
Question I can't resist asking you as a striker. If it was you, how much would you want to wear that famous Newcastle number 9 shirt, which obviously is the possession of Callum Wilson at the moment?
Oh, massive. You have to look at the size of the club. You look at the players that have represented that club in the past. look at the direction of the football club now as well, the things they're trying to build and the direction they're trying to go in, and it would be an absolute honour to represent that football club. Definitely, it's magic, it's major.
I'm going to talk to you about Philippe Coutinho in a second. Jermaine, he's arrived in Birmingham, Carve today, so how soon Villa fans will want to know, will he be on the pitch?
I think the plan, according to Steven Gerrard, when he was speaking yesterday, was for Philippe Coutinho to train for the first time with his new Aston Villa teammates tomorrow. The big question, I suppose, Villa fans will want answered is, when are they going to see him in an Aston Villa shirt? Could he play some part against Manchester United on Saturday at Villa Park? The information we have is that the player himself feels 100% physically fit. But you have to take into account the fact that he has just recovered from COVID. So he's not fully 100% match fit. And Jermaine will know better than me how long it takes for a player to become fully match fit. So I'd be surprised if he plays the whole game against Manchester United. But from the player's point of view, he's fit and raring to go. But, of course, the final decision rests with Steven Gerrard.
It's exciting news for Villa fans, obviously. Jermaine, is there any concern that his very best days might be behind him?
I don't think so. I think Philippe Coutinho has been a revelation. You know, while he was at Liverpool, he was excellent. He moved to Barcelona for humongous money. It didn't quite work out for him, unfortunately, for one reason or another. And it had nothing to do with his technical ability. He ended up going to Bayern Munich, again, did really, really well. He's been very successful in his time in Spain and in Germany. He went back to Barcelona, and again, things just didn't quite work out for him because of the situation at Barcelona. But I think Aston Villa have got an absolute world beater on their hands if they could get him to play games. And I know you mentioned a moment ago, how long will it take for a player to get match fit? Well, it's a matter of playing the games. The only way to get match fit is by playing week in, week out. And slowly but surely, you'll play 60 minutes, you'll get your energy, you'll get your second wind, 70 minutes the weekend after, 80 minutes and after that. And then, you know, there you go. You'll be a magical maestro, as Steven Gerrard called him once. So
you'd be tempted to start him if he feels he's up to it the weekend, rather than giving him 20 minutes as a sub?
I would be tempted to start him. He's not injured, is he? Somebody said that he's just coming off the back of recovering from COVID. Again, it's not a physical injury, so I would be tempted to put him in the starting 11. And worst case scenario, if he's not feeling quite up to it, you take him off at half time, but you still get those 45 minutes of quality player that we know are there, and it gives the players around him an opportunity to see what type of player he is, how good he is, and the passes that he could find as well. Yeah, it's a bit of a striker's show tonight, and a top striker with us. We've mentioned Woods, Salah, Erling Harland. What about Dusan Vlahović, Danish?
Just very, very quickly, just one extra line on Chris.
Yeah, please.
We were saying the release clause is believed to be around £20 million. One contact just messaged me and says it could be closer to £25 million. So when you look at it like that, yes, £25 million for a 30-year-old looks like good business for the team receiving that £25 million, but probably not great news considering who that £25 million is coming from, a direct rival to avoid relegation in the Premier League. But you mentioned...
Just one other thing on Chris Wood as well, because this has only happened in the last half hour or so. We haven't exactly been able to pin down whether there is a release clause, and if there is a release clause, how much is that release clause. We are just getting some information in as well. Another source is telling me that Chris Wood does have a release clause in his Burnley contract, but it only applies in the summer. Now, if this source is right, then that would suggest that Burnley have decided just to sell him, and they've decided that the offer is too good, and they've decided to cash in on him, and they obviously think that they can go out and spend that money to sign another striker who they may feel is better than Chris Wood. But this is just something that we have to pin down, and we haven't been able to pin down for the moment whether he definitely has a release clause in his contract that can be used this month.
You feel they must have seen this coming? There must be a plan B at least starting to be worked out? at least.
Of course, Burnley will know. You know, every club has their strategy for the transfer window. They will have known in advance which of their players other clubs are interested in. They would have held talks with agents. So I don't think I'd be surprised if this totally came out of the blue. But if what I'm being told now that the release clause only kicks in the summer, then it would make you think that it's Burnley's decision for him to go. It's not something that they didn't have a say in. Although I have to stress again that I haven't been able to confirm that yet.
And just picking up on that as well, if that is true and the release clause is only applicable in the summer and it's a £20 million that has been agreed by Burnley, then one of the things you'd have to look at is Chris Wood's contract is up until 2023. So would they realistically get this kind of money if they were trying to sell him in the summer, even though his release clause would be in the region of 20 to 25 million pounds? Would a club then be willing to pay that much money for a 30-plus striker going into the final year of his contract?
The one person who will clear all this up for us is Keith Downey, our Newcastle United reporter. I'm sure he's on the phone at the moment trying to get to the bottom of this story, and I'm sure he'll tell us as soon as possible whether there was a release clause in Chris Wood's contract and whether it could be triggered now or only in the summer.
He's also covering Sunderland and Lincoln for us tonight, so he's got plenty of things to jog. Just let me throw that at you, Jermaine. The idea that Burnley have maybe just decided, as Carve says, to cash in on a player who's not got that long left on his contract, and if anyone's going to spend a lot of money because they're a little bit desperate and they've got a lot of money, it's Newcastle. Maybe it makes a little bit more sense to Burnley than some Burnley fans might have initially thought when they first heard the news on Sky Sports News half an hour ago.
Yeah, I think so. I still can't help but feel like I would have kept him. If I was Burnley, I would have kept him because he's a major part of all the positive things that go on at Burnley in terms of the forward play. You know, a lot of the passes, a lot of the game goes through him, whether he's getting on the end of crosses to score, to attack, or to bring other players in. You know, you've got you've got Cornet who's come in, who's been a really, really exciting player for them. And he's probably looking at that thinking, hold on, he's a player that I loved playing with. You know, what's going on here? But again, you have to look at it from a Newcastle perspective. To weaken one of your relegation candidates, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful by saying that, but I'm looking at the situation they're in. Newcastle have done really, really well to if it goes through, to get him.
OK, Jermaine, thank you very much indeed. So much fascinating stuff to bring you on this story that I'm having to postpone Darmish's update on Dusan Vlahović once again. But stay with us. We'll get there at the end and more on Chris Wood as we get it on the Transfer Show. Better be good.
Yeah, it's not bad. Arsenal retain a very strong interest in the Fiorentina striker Dusan Vlahović. Now, it is a difficult deal to do simply because of the transfer fee that would be involved, the personal terms that would be involved, particularly in a January transfer window. But Fiorentina, they are aware that he's only got 18 months left on his contract. So in exactly 1 year from now, if he remains at Fiorentina without signing a new contract, they know that he can sign a pre-contract agreement with a club outside Italy. That said, it's not been ruled out that Vlahović could sign a new contract at Fiorentina. As far as Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta has been concerned, in his news conferences, he's always been quite positive about what they could do during this January transfer window, and they are open to doing a big deal. Could this be that potential big deal? He believes that everyone behind the scenes, Edu, the technical director, and everyone else involved in transfer dealings is working very, very hard to try and get a big deal done in January. What's more, Arsenal, could be said they've got quite a good relationship with Fiorentina. They negotiated a deal whereby Lucas Torreira, the midfielder, went from Arsenal to Fiorentina on loan. Fiorentina have an option to make that move a permanent one. Now, it won't be beyond the realms of possibility that if Arsenal are negotiating with Fiorentina at some point and they want to bring in Vlahović, could they tempt them with, here's some money, plus Lucas Torreira on a permanent deal, you can forego that option fee. This is part of the deal for Vlahović. However, sources in Italy are saying, as well as if you'd seen Mina Rizzucchi earlier on, the Italian journalist on Transfer Talk, she believes, as do a source in Italy, that there's a small chance of Vlahović moving in this transfer window, and the player's preference eventually, when he does move, is to go to a team in the Champions League, which at the moment Arsenal aren't guaranteed.
Yeah, but Arsenal do have January history because it was a January transfer when they brought in Aubameyang 2 or 3 years ago. So there's a little bit of precedent. Jermaine, if you were in Vlahovic's position and you're assessing your options, would you be tempted to leave it till the summer when maybe the field is a bit more open?
I'll be tempted to move now. I'll be looking. If I was him, I'll be sitting down, looking at the situation that Arsenal are in. Now you've got Aubameyang, you've got Lacazette, you've got Eddie Nketiah, who's obviously a little bit further out than the other two. All three of them, their contracts are up at the end of the season. So whether one of them signs a renewal or none of them do, he is going to be the #1 striker. Why not get your feet under the table now? Why not get acclimatised now and get involved with what Mikel Arteta's building? The way Arsenal are playing at the moment is really, really exciting. They just don't have that cutthroat player right at the end of the field, the #9, who is going to score a lot of goals to propel them into that Champions League spot. Now, if he did come in January and he was the main reason behind that, the fans would absolutely love him for it, and they'll get behind him. So from Arsenal's perspective, the boardroom, I would be tempted to just go all out and get him in now. And if the finances are a difficult thing for them to deal with, like paying the whatever the fee is at the moment, whatever it's been linked at, I would be tempted to structure it in a similar sort of way to what Arsenal did with Pepe. Pay a lump sum now and then structure the rest over the course of the 3, 4, 5 year. 3, 4 or 5 years that the deal will be done over.
Interesting point. And whether he comes or not, Darmish is an Arsenal striker on his way out very imminently for now.
Yeah, I mean, we've been speaking about this for the last week or two. It's Folarin Balogun. He's been having a medical at Middlesbrough today ahead of what is a straight loan because Arsenal do see him as part of their long-term plans. Remember, he signed a new contract at the Emirates in April to take him until 2025. And this is good news for Chris Wilder because in September 2020, when he was manager of Sheffield United, he tried to sign Folarin Balogun. Didn't work out then, but now as manager of Middlesbrough, it looks like he's going to get his man. And a bonus for Middlesbrough, because Folarin Balogun had a positive COVID test, he was out of action while Arsenal were getting knocked out of the FA Cup, which means he's not cup-tied. And that means he is eligible to play at Old Trafford against Manchester United for Middlesbrough in round 4.
Can I just go back just quickly on Vlahović and say that Arsenal are still a big draw for the best players in the world. I know at the moment They are going through a bit of a transition period, and they're not in the Champions League this season, and they haven't been in the Champions League for a while. But they're still one of the biggest clubs in English football. Crucially, they're in London. A lot of foreign players, when they move to the Premier League, because of their families and because of travel, they'd rather be based in London. So I think Arsenal have a real chance of signing him. And if I was an Arsenal supporter, I would be very impressed with the fact that Mikel Arteta has said to the board, I want this player. And the board have gone out there and are trying to get him for Arteta.
And to pick up Jermaine's point, all right, they're not Champions League material this season, but they're fourth in the league, and he can be the man who makes sure they're in the Champions League next season.
If you're talking about the best strikers in the world at the moment, you're talking about Harland and you're talking about Vlahović. This guy is top scorer in Italy. He's been top scorer in Italy for a couple of years. People at Fiorentina are talking about him potentially being as good as Gabriel Batistuta. We all remember how good he was. So this guy is the real deal, and Arsenal are in with a chance of signing him. And I think if it was left to the player himself, I think he would be open to the idea of going to Arsenal. But of course, he's also aware of the fact that lots of other big European clubs are interested in signing him. So people will be saying to him in his ear, look, don't make the decision yet, wait until the summer, because Juventus could come in for you, Manchester City could come in for you, Real Madrid, all these other clubs will be in the mix as well. So he's going to have to do a lot of thinking, but from an Arsenal supporter's point of view, it's great news that this is the level of player they're trying to sign for Mikel Arteta.
OK, Jermaine is taking his eyes in two different directions right now, because they're about to kick off in the only Premier League match of the evening between Southampton and Brentford. He's going to watch that, but joining our discussions as well, which include in a moment Jesse Lingard. We're also going to check in on the early stages of that match and the very latest we get it on Chris Wood.
I'm in.
I'm in.
We're all in to kick it out.
Partnering to end racism in sport.
Keep an eye on the Premier League action between Southampton and Brentford. No goals so far, but we're talking transfers still. We were expecting a busy window for Tottenham, but as yet, no incomings. We'll reflect on outgoings in a second. But first, here's Antonio Conte speaking about a meeting he's held with Daniel Levy and Fabio Paratici.
I don't have expectations, and I'm a coach, and I know that we have to solve many problems. And for me, in this moment, the best possible way is to try to get out the best of my players and to improve the squad. I think that now, in this moment, this is the only way that I can go to try to improve the situation, to try to improve the squad. The club has to decide the best way that the club wants to go.
Well, I will bring in Darmesh for a word on Conte, but there is a goal within moments of the start, minutes of the start anyway. Jermaine, watching Southampton and Brentford, what's happened?
It's been a scintillating start from Southampton. They've been putting pressure on Brentford right from the off. They've had about 3 or 4 great opportunities where they've been finding themselves in behind the fullbacks. They won a corner just a moment ago. James Ward-Prowse whipped in a menacing cross right across the 6-yard box. It's about 2 or 3 yards out, and Bednarek just glancing header. Keeper has absolutely no chance. 1-0. The game's only a couple of minutes old, and it looks like it's going to be a long evening if it stays like this, if Brentford don't get a grip of this game, honestly.
Maybe the best right-footed dead ball kicker in the world, said Thomas Frank yesterday, and how true that is looking right now, setting up that opening goal, James Ward-Prowse. So I was going to talk to you, Darmesh, about Antonio Conte and what he said at Tottenham today.
It looks like a little message to the board, isn't it? When these managers do speak in news conferences, there's always something behind what they're saying rather than taking everything on face value. And if you look at what Antonio Conte said at the back end of 2021, when he was asked about transfers, he says, look, number one, I've assessed the squad. Then he was asked again a couple of weeks later, and he says, yeah, I will talk to the board. Over the weekend, he says nobody wants to improve Tottenham more than the owner. And then today, I've given them the list. It's now up to the club. But he's actually saying a few of the other things as well to make sure that the current squad, their noses aren't put out of joint, because he says the best thing I can do now is work with the players that I've got. But it's obvious that he wants to bring in new recruits during this transfer window.
15 seconds on Steven Bergwijn. What's the latest? Ajax made an offer?
£15 million bid rejected, we reported yesterday from Ajax. And he was very complimentary. Antonio Conte on Bergwijn today said, I still like him, he's part of the squad and he gives me something unique which we don't have in our forward players. OK, let's see how many more we can rattle through between now and the end of the transfer show. What about Jesse Lingard?
Jesse Lingard, well, according to Alistair Gold, the Tottenham correspondent for Football London, who knows Spurs inside out, he reported, I think first this afternoon, that Spurs had held talks with Manchester United and Jesse Lingard's representatives about a move for Lingard. Now, of course, he is a free agent in the summer, so I think it's more likely that the talks were about a move in the summer. But of course, there is also the possibility that Jesse Lingard could move to Spurs this month, because he's not playing at Manchester United at all. Very, very rarely features. I think he played 4 minutes last night against Aston Villa. But that would tie in with what Darmesh has been reporting for a long time, which is that Jesse Lingard wants to leave Manchester United, but only in the summer when his contract runs out.
OK, Gini Wijnaldum?
Gini Wijnaldum is mixed messages, because we keep hearing that he's open to the possibility of returning to the Premier League because he wants to play regularly. That's the most important thing for him. But he has started the past 3 games for PSG. And I think if he carries on starting games for PSG, then he will remain at PSG. I know a lot of Arsenal supporters have been talking about the possibility of Wijnaldum moving to the Emirates Stadium. I think we reported 2 or 3 weeks ago that Arsenal were an option for him, and everybody knows that Arsenal have problems with injuries and players being away at the African Cup of Nations in midfield. So Wijnaldum would tick a lot of boxes. And what was intriguing today, I was having a conversation with somebody who was telling me that Gini Wijnaldum was an Arsenal supporter when he was growing up, and he loves Arsenal and they have a special place in his heart. But I would be a bit careful because we often hear things about players supporting multiple different clubs.
One word on a player called Zalan Vanksa.
Oh, look, he's one of the most highly rated young players in Europe at the moment. There was talk of him going to Manchester City, Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund, but it looks like he is going to Manchester City's sister club in Belgium, Lommel SK. But that's a name to look out for in the future, Zalan Vanksa.
You've got about 10 seconds.
Very quickly. I've just got a message from an agent, and he says, all focus on Ekitike for Newcastle, talks ongoing.
OK, thank you, gentlemen. Thanks to Jermaine for his contributions. He's told us Southampton leading Brentford by 1-0, the only other goal in the EFL so far. Mansfield leads Swindon by 1-0. We'll keep in touch with all the football in a couple of minutes on Sky Sports News.